Fatal Frame, the game that started it all. If you're a regular on my channel, then you no doubt know that the Fatal Frame series is incredibly near and dear to me, and I've been wanting to do a series of timeline videos for each of the games for a while now. So, let's go all the way back to the beginning, back to where it all began. Let's break down all the pieces and put them in a neat little chronological timeline so we can get a broader picture of what's taking place and when. I'll include dates in the corner of the video so you can tell roughly where we are, and if you see a question mark, that means the date isn't for certain, but rather an estimate based off what we know. After all, not everything is given a neat little exact date, especially the further back you go in history. Now, this isn't a story breakdown video. I'll actually do another of those sometime soon. This is merely a timeline video, with information taken from the PlayStation game, the Xbox game, official Japanese guides, and various other games throughout the series that have also mentioned events from Fatal Frame 1. These games tend to be quite generous with giving us precise dates and spans of time in various files and cutscenes, so piecing together a rather accurate timeline isn't all that hard. Although, as I said, some dates do have to be guessed and narrowed down from other sources. Not everything here is exact, and I'll specify when it's not. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get right into it. Let's dig into the timeline of Fatal Frame 1, and the incident, or rather incidents, at the Himuro Mansion. To start, let's head all the way back to the late 1700s. In the priest's research notes from the Xbox version of the game, we're told that Kyuki Tokisada, a samurai at the Himuro Mansion, lost his mind during the strangling ritual 40 years ago. Because the calamity, the big event in Fatal Frame 1, took place in 1837, we can assume Kyuki went wild during 1797. He was, of course, unhappy that his love was taking part in the ritual, and attacked a priest in an attempt to stop it going through. He was restrained, and then told to end his own life as punishment. He did, but he was so angry that his spirit remained to haunt the mansion, kind of like an annihilate that refuses to pass on after death because it's just so damn angry that it wants to keep punching things. Understandable. Now, let's fast forward a few decades. Because we know that the demon tag and blinding rituals take place 10 years before the strangling ritual, which, again, took place in 1837, 1827 is the year where Himuro Kirie takes part in the demon tag ritual at age 7. Kirie was the last girl caught, and because this meant she had the strongest spiritual power, she was chosen to be the next rope shrine maiden, and thus began her 10 years of preparations. We also know from various files that the demon tag ritual takes place specifically on November 26th. However, shortly before that, the blinding ritual also takes place on the same day. This is when a maiden, the girl who was caught first in the previous demon tag ritual, 10 years prior, takes part in a ritual where she is blinded. This is done to blind the spirits behind the Hellgate, and she also becomes the Oni, who chases the girls during the demon tag ritual. Whoever she catches first becomes her successor in 10 years. Whoever she catches last becomes the next rope shrine maiden. A research scrap written by Munakata Ryozo also muses that perhaps she is blinded so as to remove all attachment and allow her to fulfill her role properly. After all, her own family members may be taking part in the ritual, and it wouldn't be fair if she acted in a way beneficial to them. At any rate, a few weeks later, on December 13th, the strangling ritual took place. This was the last successful ritual before the calamity, which we'll get to shortly. By this point, Kirie has begun her 10 years of being cut off from the outside world for 3,669 long days, as the strangling ritual document tells us. Now, let's jump forward again to the big year, 1837. At some point during this year, a young unnamed man arrives at the mansion as a guest. While walking through the garden one day, he spotted Kirie looking at him from a nearby window. He found her intriguing, and then, on a later date, he happened upon her in the cherry atrium. The pair quickly hit it off, but as the pair grew closer, the priests tried to keep them apart. After all, Kirie had to lose all her worldly attachments for the upcoming ritual to be a success. As these sad love stories tend to go, drastic measures were taken, and after the guest ignored their warnings, he was killed and tossed into the abyss. Kirie was then told he simply went home. But because of her strong spiritual powers, it didn't take long for Kirie to realize that was a lie. She saw him in a dream and realized what actually happened. This greatly saddened her. On November 26, the final blinding and demon tag rituals took place. These went off without a hitch, and nobody was any the wiser about what was about to happen. Then, on December 12th, the night before the strangling ritual, Kirie had another dream. She dreamt of Kyuki, and he told her to break the mirror. Break the mirror and fulfill my desire. The mirror he was referring to was the Holy Mirror, an incredibly important item used in the strangling ritual to repel the malice and keep the calamity at bay in front of the Hellgate. If that mirror breaks, then the ghosts will be let out. Kyuki plants the idea in Kirie's head that she can perhaps see her unnamed lover again, if such a thing were to take place. And so, on December 13th, 1837, Kirie takes part in the strangling ritual. But it fails. She had grown attachment to her unnamed lover, and this made her an unsuitable sacrifice. According to the calamity document, 1,347 people died that day, and malice escaped from the Hellgate. This bad air, also known as miasma, caused all the people who died in the mansion to become trapped there in an endless loop of suffering. Everyone died, and nobody could move on. After that, the Himuro mansion was left abandoned. Nobody dared go near the accursed place. At least, not until the infamous Dr. Asou, creator of the camera obscura. While researching on how to better make his cameras, he comes across information related to the Holy Mirror from the Himuro mansion. He believes that this mirror could be a key piece of the puzzle for his cameras, and so he heads to the Himuro mansion to find it. The exact date of this is tricky. We know that Dr. Asou was alive in 1909, because that was when he attended the Dogetsu Kagura on Dogetsu Island that we see in Fatal Frame 4. We also know that the Hikami disaster from Fatal Frame 5 took place sometime around 1910, when Dr. Asou was also alive, and apparently having a busy few years. So, although we don't have any exact dates, it's likely that sometime after this, probably during the mid-1910s, that Dr. Asou visits the mansion, and then mysteriously disappears. He is, unfortunately, never seen again, but before he disappeared, he did finish his camera with the piece of the Holy Mirror inside it. R.I.P. good doctor, R.I.P. Now, sometime after that, Munakata Ryozo, a good friend of Dr. Asou's, and a folklorist himself, also finds himself doing research on the area. With his wife, Yae, and their child, Mikoto, they move into the mansion so he can continue researching the rituals that took place there, while also staying close to his family. Now, Mikoto is 6 when the family moves into the mansion. This is the only age or date we're given for this. She is, however, Hinasaki Miku's grandmother, and we know that Miku was born in 1969. If we assume her to be an average grandmother age when Miku was born, then Mikoto was probably born in the early 1920s, meaning the family likely moved in towards the end of the 20s. We're not given exact dates, however, so this is just guesswork. Either way, it's sometime around this time period. At any rate, the old diary scrap 1 tells us that Munakata and his family moved in on May 20th, unknown year. It was a struggle getting permission from the locals, but they finally did it. Mikoto has already made friends, but Yae finds the mansion to be spooky. Munakata is pleased, however, because now he can do all his research right here at home by his sick wife's side. On June 2nd, Munakata remarks that around the end of May, he found documents left by the final Himuro master that reveal he went on a murderous rampage during the calamity before taking his own life. Munakata also remarks on how the mansion is tricky and there are rooms not on the house plans. On June 5th, he also remarks on how the locals really don't want to tell him anything about the strangling ritual. Shocking, truly. June proves to be a big month for the family, however. It's during this time that Mikoto has a birthday, turning 7. As you may remember, a fateful number, as that's the age that the girls living in the Himuro mansion would take part in the demon tag ritual. Munakata continues his research, while Yae remarks that Mikoto has been playing demon tag here with her neighborhood friends. On June 13th, Mikoto tells her father that a girl in a white kimono gave her a camera. It's an odd camera, because of course, it's the final camera obscura that Dr. Asou made before disappearing. The girl in the white kimono is the childlike spirit of Kirie, split from her body as the calamity took over. She actually wants to help, and this is why she points Mikoto towards the camera. Munakata examines the camera, but doesn't see anything special about it. On June 15th, the family take a walk in the mountains. Yae has been feeling better, and she takes the camera with them, snapping shots as they walk. But unfortunately, this particular camera is able to exert power over the person using it. And being a camera obscura, of course, it can take pictures of ghosts. Over the next few days, as Yae takes more and more pictures, she realizes what the camera is doing, and before long, she's able to see spirits even without the camera. Mikoto asks for the camera back, but Yae refuses. She can't let her daughter see what she has been seeing. Mikoto, however, being just a child, really wants that camera, and even though her mother refuses her, she takes it anyway while she's ill in bed. She then plays demon tag with 3 of her friends on June 24th. But unfortunately, a ghost shows up and spirits the 3 friends away. Because she had the camera, Mikoto was able to escape, but her parents are unaware of this, and are, of course, incredibly upset that their daughter has seemingly disappeared. A newspaper article mentions that on the 3rd, 4 children failed to return home. But considering that Yae writes that the children disappeared on June 24th, it's likely that the news just took some time to travel. Either way, after the disappearance of her only child, Yaya is so distraught that she hangs herself in the cherry atrium shortly thereafter. Her husband unfortunately finds her and he blames the camera for everything that's going on. He realizes that something is still going on in the mansion, so he sets about figuring out what. After obtaining various ritual masks and even some of the holy mirror, Munakata makes his way down to the demon mouth beneath the mansion. But there, he runs into Kirie and is pulled inside. He dies instantly. A newspaper article mentions that 3 days after going missing, Mikoto is found by a local man. Considering the previous article said that the children went missing on July 3rd, we can assume she's found on July 6th. Either way, early in July, she's found by a local, and police are looking for a foster home for her now that both her parents are missing as well. In the end, Mr. Hinasaki, a friend of Munakata's, takes her in. Mikoto still has no memory of what happened, but she does still have the camera, which she takes with her. Over the next few decades, the Himuro mansion remains empty. Of course, it is still full of ghosts, so the locals fear it, and warn people not to go near it, particularly around the end of the year, when the old rituals used to take place. Mikoto also grows up and has a daughter, Miyuki. The father is unknown, as is the date of her birth, but it's probably in the mid to late 1940s. Perhaps because of her mother's history with the camera, Miyuki is born frail and sickly, but with a strong sixth sense. Miyuki also inherits that camera from her mother as she grows up, and she uses it during her work as an assistant to Hinasaki Masato, an archaeologist and relative of the man who adopted Miyuki's mother. Eventually, the pair fall in love and get married, and in either 1963 or 1965, Mafuyu is born. There's some discrepancy here, as the official website at the time listed Mafuyu as 23, but the Perfect Guide listed him as 21. Considering that Mafuyu has graduated university by the time the game takes place, 23 would make more sense. But it's a good reminder that even the official sources often conflict with each other, so keep that in mind. At any rate, in 1969, Miku is then born. In the early 1970s, a dismembered body was found in the Himuro mansion that, unbeknownst to police, strongly resembles what happens during the strangling ritual, with all of the limbs being torn off. 15 years later, in 1986, another body is found in the same spot in a similar state. Seems the locals warning people to stay away from the mansion weren't just saying so for fun. During this time, both of Mafuyu and Miku's parents passed away. Masato died during his research, and Miyuki died in much the same way as her grandmother, Yae, after taking her own life thanks to the effects the camera had on her. Mafuyu then inherited said camera, and his mother's notebooks talking about it. And after graduating from university, he started working for Takamine Junsei, a best-selling novelist, presumably in 1985 or 1986. Once again, the Hinasaki family finds itself drawn back to the Himuro mansion, as Takamine wants to write a horror novel, and during his research, he comes across the mansion and thinks it would make a fascinating subject to write about. On July 24th, 1986, Takamine writes about the Himuro mansion in his journal. A short while later, an earthquake hits the area, destroying all 5 holy mirrors that are kept in 5 different shrines in the area. However, once every 10 years, the mirrors come together for the Five Gods Festival to fend off disaster. With the protective mirrors now broken, priests fear something terrible is about to happen. But when Takamine hears about this, he decides to pivot his story more specifically to this topic. Takamine has his assistant, Hirasaka Tomoe, and his editor, Ogata Koji, join him in his research. Throughout the end of August, the trio dig up all the information they can find on the Himuro mansion and what went down there. But naturally, it's hard to find anything concrete. They find information about Munakata's research, and then disappearance. And then Takamine decides they should visit the mansion directly. Considering all the deaths and disappearances that have taken place there over the years, his assistant doesn't have a very good feeling about this, however. On September 8th, Takamine calls his publisher to let them know what he's doing. The next day, on September 9th, Takamine, Hirasaka, and Ogata head out. The mansion doesn't exist on any maps, so they ask the locals for directions. They tell them the way, but they also warn the trio to not go. That mansion has been empty for decades, and should remain so. Of course, they ignore those warnings, and around 9:40 p.m. that night, the trio arrive at the mansion. Ogata records a tape remarking on how the interior is actually still in good shape, despite how the outside looks. He also notes that he saw a white shadowy figure of a woman in the hallway near the entrance, and he will keep an eye out for further such sightings. The next few days do not go well for the trio. On September 10th, they continue their investigations, discovering old photos, weird puzzle-like devices around the mansion, and now the front door is broken and won't let them leave either. They're also seeing ghosts everywhere. On September 11th, Ogata starts feeling unwell and becomes separated from the others. Hirasaka also keeps seeing Kirie's spirit around the place. On September 12th, Ogata remarks in his notes that now there's another rope, and another rope. Rope marks are showing up on his body, and that morning, Kirie finds and kills him. Hirasaka makes a recording at 9 a.m. that morning where she reveals she found his body dismembered, just like the others. Various spirits around the mansion appeal to her for help, while Takamine is now also seeing Kirie. On September 13th, around 9:30 a.m., Takamine notes that he has also found Ogata's body, and there's a photo near him that shows what looks like ropes around his neck, arms, and legs. Later that day, he remarks that Hirasaka is acting strangely and mumbling about ropes and mirrors. She wanders all the way down to the abyss, and there, Takamine watches Kirie kill her, although he is able to escape. The next day, Takamine notices that ropes are appearing in a photo of him, just like what happened to Ogata and Hirasaka. He's next. He also figures out from all his research that there aren't just 5 holy mirrors, but one more. The true holy mirror. He hopes that if he can find it, he can break the curse before he too dies. However, he's too late, and Kirie kills him as well. A week later, on September 22nd, a newspaper reports that Takamine and his crew are missing. He last contacted his publishers on September 8th and hasn't been heard from since. 2 days later, on September 24th, Mafuyu sets out to find his mentor. But when he enters the mansion, Kirie is struck by how much he resembles her old lover, and she decides not to kill him. He is, however, trapped in the house with her. And this leads us to the beginning of the game. On October 3rd, 1986, Miku arrives to look for her missing brother. She finds their mother's camera in the hall, and thus begins her adventure to uncover all of the stuff we just talked about. The game takes place over several nights. On the night of her arrival, she finds the first mirror piece, learns the fate of the trio, and is attacked by Kirie as well. The next night, she realizes she now has rope marks around her wrists, encounters various ghosts, makes her way to the demon mouth, and encounters Kirie again. The next night, she finds more mirror pieces, fights more ghosts, makes her way into the moon shrine, and is just barely saved by Kirie's younger, benevolent spirit, before angry Kirie can kill her. On the final night, October 6th, Miku uncovers the rest of the story regarding Kirie and her lost love, the failed ritual, the calamity, and all that good stuff, and is able to battle and defeat her. When the camera obscura breaks during battle, she finds the final piece of the true holy mirror, and is able to pacify Kirie and the malice. Mafuyu then chooses to stay with her, to offer her comfort as she finally carries out her duty to keep the Hell Gate closed. The end. And that is the timeline of the very first Fatal Frame game, starting all the way back in the 1700s and leading up to early October of 1986. I will be covering the other games in later videos, but what did you guys think of this one? What is your favourite part of the first game, either from a lore or even gameplay perspective? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.